So this is a abrupt, kind of a hit and run posting. Um, this is just a drawing of one of of all my characters from 2008. Yet it's not the drawing that's important; it's the signature. And I'll hold it still here so that you can all study it for accuracy and make sure it's not a forgery. That is Stan Lee or Stan Lieber. He was born Stan Lieber, but Stan Lee. And of course, he just passed earlier today, 95 years old. That's a long time. Kirk Douglas has outlived everybody, I think. Kirk Douglas is, I think, 101, going on 102 years old. That man, I think Kirk Douglas will outlive all of us. All of us, even me. And I'm like 140, okay? So, Stan Lee, well, I'll give you the history of it. I'll show you the history of Stan Lee. He was Stan Lieber. And we'll go back to the. Well, we'll explain the signature in a minute, in a few minutes. But let me just show you some pictures. Here's the introduction by Stan Lee. Stan Lee was a company man. He was never a modest person. He always wanted to be in the spotlight. Let's see. Here's Stan Lee. Let's see. I'll show you. Let's see if I can show these really well. This is from the. What are we calling this book again? 5 Fabulous Decades of the World's Greatest Comics. This is the Marvel history book. So this is a Stan Lee card that was exclusive. I'm not sure if I think you got it. It's a rare card you found in a. This is when they used to do comic book card sets. They had Marvel Masterpieces, Flair, 1994. I collected the Flair ones. I still have those cards. Those like 1 to 1 centimeter thick cards. They were really neat. Anyway, I'm rambling on. Here is Stan Lee at the office, if you could see him pretty clearly. And of course, here's Stan Lee smoking. That might have contributed to his bad health. Let me see if I can get some more. Here is Stan Lee doing Uncle Sam. This is for 1975. Here it is, it's Spider-Man. Here he is, square off to face with Spider-Man here. Because he always saw himself as J. Jonah Jameson, I think. So, fantastic, I'm one of the few YouTubers that actually sneezes on cue. So, as I go to this, Stan Lee was a company person. I mean, he helped create Spider-Man through his writing. But I chose this one, this particular cover, because it's a parody of Captain America #3. And Stan Lee's job was to put in the writing. So Captain America, no, what is it? The Red Skull planned a horrible death for Bucky unless Captain America comes in. So these are my characters that I created for my stories. So this is supposed to be the Red Skull. And there's Bucky, but that's Rosemary, and there's the Mexican Avenger, but this is, or it's supposed to be Captain America, but this is the Mexican Avenger. And so instead of Nazis, you got my counterpart, you got Rye, you got Gino. So, and you got Valiant. So this is his sidekick, the talking cat. I'm pinballing all over the place because I'm trying to get to the relevance of this. So this is the guy here, Martin Goodman, who founded Marvel Comics. And Stan Lieber was like a relative of Martin Goodman's. And at some point, Stan Lee, or Lieber, comes in. That's Jack Kirby, who passed away in '94. And I barely knew who that guy was until I started reading the Fourth World and some of the Marvel stuff. Let's see if I can find Stan Lee. Stan Lee started doing for Captain America #3. Here he is with I don't even know if she's still alive, but here's Stan Lee, young man, 1940s. I think if he was 95, and let me think about that. 1940. I'm doing my math here very carefully. 95. He might have been 17. Is that right? Let me see. He might have been like 18, 19, 20. Might have been in his late teens, early 20s in this photograph here. But anyway, Stan Lee represented the face of Marvel. He represented, you know, Spider-Man and the X-Men and the Hulk and Iron Man and Fantastic Four, all these different heroes, Silver Surfer, lots of things. I'm thinking that Jack Kirby worked well with Stan Lee. They were both company men, suits and ties. Some people like Denny O'Neil, Lee Ditko, they were more modest, more hippie, modest, sort of on the rebellious side. So as I'm flipping through this, Stan Lee and Lee Ditko worked on the Amazing Spider-Man, the Amazing Fantasy number 15, and then the Amazing Spider-Man number 1, and for a few years. There was a disagreement between the two, particularly about the Green Goblin. Green Goblin is supposed to be Norman Osborn, as everybody knows. But at the beginning, they were kind of figuring it out, in which the Green Goblin, Lee Ditko, who was the artist, wanted the Green Goblin to be just some guy, just some pathetic person, nobody important, just some person who was ignored by society. And Stan Lee says, no, 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 we went through all this trouble developing this character. He's got to be somebody. He's got to be somebody important. So there were disagreements like that led to Lee Ditko leaving Marvel Comics. So people forgot about Lee Ditko, but Lee Ditko illustrated Spider-Man and Stan Lee wrote Spider-Man. And in the world of comic books, it is the artist that's more important than the writer the first time you see characters. The first time you see a comic book, it's the artist who matters. And the second time you see a comic book, it's the writer who matters. Why? Because that's how comic books work. When you're looking at a comic book as opposed to a novel, you're looking at the picture. So Lee Ditko was the guy, putting that picture up. And this is actually John Romita and not Lee Ditko. But let me see if I have Lee Ditko's where Spider-Man is struggling. This is it. This is the one where Spider-Man is struggling to get out of a trap. And he's thinking about all his friends and if he can come out alive. This was Lee Ditko's last Spider-Man comic strips. So Stan Lee was always the company man. Just like his close personal friend was Bob Kane, who did Batman. But Bob Kane was just the artist. And Bill Finger was the writer. And Jerry Robinson contributed to the Joker. So sometimes it's a 3-person effort, 2 or 3 people to help design these characters. But Stan Lee was the guy who was the yes company man. He was always saying yes. He put money and business before creativity. That's just the way he was. Sometimes he would talk shit and people would get mad at him. But he was an old man. He resorted into kind of just talking shit for a living. Sometimes now that he was retired, got into a lawsuit. I mean, he filed a lawsuit. No, I think he sued Marvel Comics and won some sort of compensation. I'm not sure what it was about. I keep forgetting these details. But yeah, so Stan Lee contributed to all the superheroes, writing them and such. He did a comic strip up until a few years ago about Spider-Man. Just like a normal 4-panel page like you see in the Sunday Funnies. There was Spider-Man had his own Sunday Funnies. So yeah, so like he was a company man to the point where you would see him in cartoons. And when I first met Stan Lee, he would say, "This is it, true believers. That's right, true believers. Here it is, true believers." So that's the way I saw him. When I was born in 1978, I would see this man talk about the Hulk cartoon or Spider-Man and his amazing friends, basically Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar. And he would be this cartoon character you'd see, Saturday mornings, he'd pop up somewhere, and he would pop up as your friendly neighborhood comic book creator. And then he would narrate some things, he would appear as cameos and other things, but I never really knew who he was until later on. And then he started showing up in every damn Marvel movie, Hulk, X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. Even if the movie wasn't very good, There was one he didn't show up in. Now I think that was like Man-Thing. And Man-Thing was that very, I think that was the one with Rachel Taylor. Rachel Taylor was the star of that one. She's in a Netflix show. I don't know which one it is, but she's in a Netflix show now. But she was in Man-Thing, but Stan Lee was not. So Stan Lee has been in the Avengers and every Marvel movie. And he was also a Pixar character for Big Hero 6 for Disney. So Stan Lee liked to be in the spotlight. He liked to take the credit. He liked to be out there. He had disagreements with Denny O'Neil, but, you know, overall, he had a lot of good business sense. He wanted to see the future things go forward. He just thought about business. Let me see if I have the last few words of this book, actually, because it kind of shows you where he was going. Let's see. Publisher Stan Lee, who in his half a century with the company has contributed more than anybody else to the Marvel Universe, was named chairman of Marvel Comics in 1990, but he is not resting on his laurels. Sorry, I know it's blurry. Sorry about that. Lee continues to negotiate movie deals for Marvel's heroes, and from time to time writes new adventures for his favorites among the myriad characters he has created. Still going strong after 50 years with Marvel, that's 1989. It is now. It's going to be 2019. Happy 70th birthday? Or 80th birthday. It's Marvel's 80th birthday next year. Still going strong after 50 years with Marvel, Lee remains optimistic about the company's future. The past is behind us, and the future, with all its mysterious wonders, is ever unfolding. There are countless stories for us to tell, and we never tire of telling them. So we'll continue to probe the endless possibilities of our wonderful comic book world, knowing it has no limits other than imagination itself, and wherever the flight of fantasy may take us. One truth remains as steadfast today as in the past. We and our readers will be sharing the excitement together. Enough said. So, you know, this was considering the future as the past, and this is 1989 that this was made, considering Todd McFarlane at the time was the regular Spider-Man artist and writer before he did Spawn. Now, I designed this to be like this was Stan Lee's very first project on Marvel, was Captain America #3. So if you go to Captain America #3, 1940, or 1941, you will see the cover that reminds you of this. So this is a parody. This is in tribute. This is not the actual cover. But everything here, and I had Stan Lee use a small pen. I still have that pen somewhere. It's a black pen. I kept that pen as a souvenir. And Stan Lee signed a political book about Barack Obama, but I don't know where that is. But this is the souvenir I kept. To me, this was a rite of passage. This was me to be okay as a writer and an artist, sort of a blessing from the godfather of creativity. So I have nothing. I don't like Stan Lee as a professional businessman too much, because when you stay in professional business, you turn to the dark side a lot. You live in the dark side all the time, and you have to remember the creators and the people who have to work their way up. So I feel bad for Lee Ditko and some of the other people that, some people that Lee turned away. But Lee had to think of money and business. And Marvel is where it is today. I think some people criticize the Marvel comic books for the lack of creativity they had, that they didn't have maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. I collected a lot of comic books on that very top shelf you see right there. A lot of Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, some of the classic stuff. And I have Spider-Man archives books. So I met Stan Lee for a few seconds. You could only talk to him for a few seconds, and then we move on to the next person. And he said, he said to me, "How does that look? That's okay for you? All right." So he didn't say much. So he didn't look at me in the eye. Everybody kind of comes and goes and comes and goes. That's how it was. I met him at the Los Angeles Comic Book Convention Center, and the line was like in a spiral pattern. This was Stan the Man Lee, right? So yeah. So I don't have much more to say. There are a lot of great people who create. George Lucas. George Lucas is getting old. Walt Disney passed away in 1966. Who else do we have that's still creating today? We lost Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster back in the 90s. We lost Bob Kane, Bill Finger. We lost a lot of great creative people. There are very few creative people like who are masterminds of stuff. I try to be like them, but I try to be myself as well. Write what you know, write what is true to your heart, but illustrate, if you can illustrate what you remember. So thank you, Stan Lee. I'm not that heartbroken, to be honest. I'm not too sentimental, but I respect all the time you put into these things. It's not easy running a business and trying to be. It's not easy trying to be the lesser guy who just wants to create and make people happy and put art and writing, and then be the person on top who has to think of money and making a business. That's very difficult to do. So thank you very much. I'm going to have something to eat. I'm going to have a tonkatsu sandwich with some soy sauce in it. It's going to be good. I think I'm going to like it. Some Little Tokyo. And I have some other creative projects to work on, including Mackenzie Foy's fictional character that's going to be like a comic strip that I'm going to work on. So take care. And I'll preview the Fantastic Beasts sequel, I think, with Eddie Redmayne on Thursday. All right. Out and out.